Following the end of Reconstruction in 1877, the United States entered an era of remarkable economic growth and transformation. This period, often called the Gilded Age, was marked by rapid industrialization, massive urban expansion, technological innovation, the rise of tycoons and monopolies, and profound social and political shifts. Beneath the glittering surface of prosperity, however, lay widespread corruption, exploitation of labor, and growing inequality. The name Gilded Age, coined by Mark Twain, suggested a golden surface that hid deeper problems beneath. One of the most significant forces shaping this era was industrialization. After the Civil War, the U.S. economy shifted from primarily agrarian to heavily industrial. Railroads crisscrossed the continent, linking cities, ports, and farmlands. The Transcontinental Railroad, completed in 1869, connected the East Coast to the West Coast, transforming transportation, commerce, and migration. Steel, oil, and coal industries boomed. The Bessemer process made steel production cheaper and more efficient, fueling the rise of skyscrapers and massive bridges. The United States became the world's leading producer of manufactured goods by the late 19th century. Andrew Carnegie, a Scottish immigrant, dominated the steel industry and amassed a fortune by streamlining production and slashing costs. He famously believed in the gospel of wealth, arguing that the rich had a duty to give back to society. John D. Rockefeller built Standard Oil into one of the most powerful and controversial monopolies in history. By ruthlessly eliminating competition, cutting deals with railroads, and vertically integrating his operations, Rockefeller controlled nearly 90% of U.S. oil refining at his peak. J.P. Morgan, the powerful banker, financed railroads, consolidated companies, and stabilized markets during crisis, effectively becoming a central figure in American capitalism. These industrialists, often called captains of industry by admirers and robber barons by critics, embodied the new American economy. While they created jobs and pushed technological progress, they also manipulated markets, underpaid workers, crushed labor unions, and influenced politics to protect their interests. Labor conditions in factories, mines, and railroads were often brutal. Workers endured long hours, low pay, unsafe environments, and little job security. Many lived in overcrowded tenements in growing urban slums. Child labor was widespread. As a response, workers began organizing. The Knights of Labor, formed in 1869, was one of the first major labor organizations and aimed to unite all workers, regardless of skill level, gender, or race. Later, the American Federation of Labor, founded in 1886 by Samuel Gompers, focused on skilled workers and pushed for higher wages and better conditions through collective bargaining. Tensions between labor and management often erupted into violence. The Haymarket Riot of 1886 in Chicago began as a peaceful protest but ended with a bomb explosion and deaths, leading to widespread anti-union sentiment. The Homestead Strike in 1892 at Carnegie Steel turned deadly when private guards and striking workers clashed. The Pullman Strike of 1894 disrupted rail traffic nationwide until federal troops intervened, siding with business owners. These events highlighted the growing pains of industrial America and the fierce resistance to labor reform. While factories and cities grew, so did immigration. Between 1880 and 1920, over 20 million immigrants arrived in the United States, mainly from Southern and Eastern Europe. Italians, Poles, Jews, Russians, Greeks, and others sought escape from poverty, persecution, and lack of opportunity in their homelands. Many settled in industrial cities like New York, Chicago, and Pittsburgh, taking jobs in steel mills, garment factories, and construction. Immigrants brought new languages, cultures, religions, and traditions, enriching American society, but also provoking fear and resentment from native-born citizens. This surge in immigration led to the rise of nativism, belief that America should remain predominantly Anglo-Saxon and Protestant. Anti-immigrant groups lobbied for restrictions. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was the first major federal law to ban immigration based on nationality, and it set a precedent for future restrictions. Xenophobia and racism flourished in some quarters, even as immigrants built the very cities and industries powering the economy. American cities expanded rapidly. In 1860, only 1 in 6 Americans lived in cities. By 1900, nearly 40% of Americans were urban dwellers. Cities like New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Boston swelled with new arrivals. Skyscrapers reached skyward, powered by steel frames and elevators. Streetcars and electric lights transformed city life. But with growth came serious problems. Overcrowded housing, poor sanitation, polluted water, and crime. Reformers like Jacob Riis, in his book How the Other Half Lives, exposed the squalid conditions of tenement life and spurred calls for urban reform. This era also saw the emergence of powerful political machines in cities' organizations that provided services and favors in exchange for votes. The most notorious was Tammany Hall in New York City, led by Boss Tweed. These machines helped immigrants navigate the complex urban landscape, but were also rife with corruption, embezzlement, and nepotism. Reformers tried to dismantle these systems and implement civil service reforms to reduce patronage. Amid this backdrop of economic upheaval and urban growth, a new political movement emerged: populism. Farmers in the South and Midwest, feeling crushed by debt, high railroad rates, and falling crop prices, began organizing into cooperatives and political groups. The Grange movement, followed by the Farmers' Alliances, culminated in the formation of the Populist Party in 1891. The Populists called for government ownership of railroads, direct election of senators, income tax reforms, and the use of silver to inflate currency and ease debts. In the 1896 presidential election, the Populists backed William Jennings Bryan, a Democrat who delivered his famous Cross of Gold speech advocating for bimetallism. However, William McKinley, a Republican supported by industrialists and bankers, won the presidency. This defeat signaled the decline of the populist movement, but marked the beginning of political realignment that would shape the next century. The United States was not only transforming internally, it was also beginning to assert itself on the global stage. This period marked the start of American imperialism. With its industrial might, the country sought new markets and resources abroad. The Spanish-American War of 1898 was a turning point, triggered by the explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor. And fueled by sensationalist yellow journalism, the war led to a swift U.S. victory over Spain. As a result, the U.S. gained control over Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, and exerted influence over Cuba. This expansion signaled America's arrival as a global power. The acquisition of the Philippines, however, led to a brutal war of resistance. Filipino nationalists, led by Emilio Aguinaldo, fought against U.S. rule, resulting in a bloody conflict that lasted several years and claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. The war sparked debate in the U.S. over the morality of imperialism and America's role in the world. The annexation of Hawaii in 1898 was another step in U.S. expansion. American business interests had long dominated the islands, and when Queen Liliuokalani sought to reclaim native sovereignty, a group of American planters and U.S. Marines overthrew her. Hawaii's strategic location in the Pacific made it valuable for military and commercial purposes. At home, progressive voices were beginning to rise in response to the inequities of the Gilded Age. Reformers, journalists, and activists pushed for changes in labor laws, child welfare, housing, and political accountability. Muckrakers like Ida Tarbell, who exposed Standard Oil's monopolistic practices, and Upton Sinclair, whose novel The Jungle revealed horrific conditions in meatpacking plants, helped galvanize public opinion. Their work laid the foundation for the upcoming progressive era, a time when government would begin to play a more active role in regulating the economy and addressing social issues. As the 20th century dawned, the United States stood transformed. It had evolved from a fractured post-Civil War nation into a unified industrial powerhouse. Its cities bustled with energy, its factories hummed with productivity, and its navy patrolled oceans far from American shores. But the Gilded Age had left unresolved tensions between rich and poor, labor and capital, immigrants and nativists that would continue to shape the American experience. The seeds of reform had been planted, and the coming years would see a struggle to balance the promises of progress with the demands of justice and democracy.